Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Buzz, how accountants and bookkeepers can leverage AI. I'm sure a few of you will recognize me, Tony Stevenson here from FreeAgent. I'll just give everyone a few seconds for the numbers to keep climbing. And if you want to say hello in the chat box, you're more than welcome to. As she knows, I can't start any webinar until I've seen Claire Kendall say hello in the chat box, because she jumps on every single webinar. And it's just not the same without her. So we will we'll give everyone a minute or two just to get started. If you want to put in the chat box where you are dialing in from, and that helps everybody to get a good understanding of where we're all going from. So brilliant. Cool. Those numbers are still climbing, but we'll get cracking. There we go. So today's agenda. So a little bit of brief housekeeping just to kick things off and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. Introductions. I'll do a very brief scene set on what we're going to be talking about today. And then we'll jump into the panel discussion, which will take up the lion's share of today's session. There's some really interesting topics, a lot to think about, a lot to discuss. And as we've been sort of preparing this, it became apparent we could probably talk for half a day on these subjects. Who knows, there might be a part two. And then hopefully we'll have time for a quick live sort of Q&A at the end. If you've got any particularly in-depth questions around this stuff, then there might be the opportunity for us to sort of pick it up and go into it in a bit more detail after the webinar. And then at the end of the sort of course of the normal webinar, which will run for an hour, we will then have, I'll do a brief demo for those of you that haven't seen FreeAgent before. So we've got a mixture of sort of partners and people new to FreeAgent on the session today. So if you want to stick around just to find out a little bit more about FreeAgent, then you're more than welcome to. Brief bit of housekeeping. So today's session will be recorded. Now, I will be surprised if that question doesn't get asked somewhere in the chat at some point, but it will be recorded for anyone that's sort of not here yet but joins us later. It will be sent out to you for anyone that's got to drop off and pick up the kids or whatever it might be. If you've got specific questions about what's going on in the webinar that you want sort of myself or one of the panelists to answer, please use the Q&A rather than the chat. So the chat is for saying hello to your mates, commenting, all that kind of stuff. If you've got something specific you want us to answer, we've got people on the flight deck today, and Stuart, who's going to do his best to answer what we've got as it comes through. And then if there's anything that we might save for the end, and just have a quick run over those just to see if there's anything in there that's come up again and again. But what it helps us to do is keep all the questions in one place so that we are able to access them, rather than if you put them in the chat, they just get buried and lost. We operate a polite and respectful policy. Now, I'm sure that nobody was going to get too upset and start throwing digital rocks, but we have had one or two occasions where there have been people who have been upset and not made the experience pleasant for everybody else. I liken it to when you go into the cinema. If there's somebody shouting and being unruly in the cinema, it kind of ruins the experience for everybody else. So please be polite and respectful. By all means, ask questions, challenge, but do it in an agreeable way, so we don't have to eject anybody from the webinar, which I'm sure we won't, but I thought I would bring that up now. Trials and polls. So what we have on these webinars, as I said, we have a bunch of people who are new to FreeAgent, and then we have a bunch of people who already use FreeAgent. So there will be opportunities throughout to answer a couple of polls that we want to get to gain a bit of interest and understanding as to what people's views are on AI and the subjects that we're talking about today. And then also give you the opportunity to say, yeah, do you know what, I'd like somebody from FreeAgent to contact me, because those guys seem to know what they're talking about, and we're keen to work with them on a more of an ongoing basis. There'll be four opportunities to say, yes, I'd like someone to contact me. So if you're still on the fence and then further down the track you decide, actually a bit later in the webinar, then you're more than welcome to. We start them from the beginning. So if people are just joining us for the beginning and then suddenly they have to drop off for whatever reason, and I've already mentioned the FreeAgent demo, so we will have that at the end for about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just to show you a quick look and feel and give you the opportunity to see what FreeAgent's all about. I'm sure most of you will have picked this up already, but we are sort of CPD accredited now, so you'll get 1 CPD point for this. In order to claim that, there will be a link that comes around in the follow-up email, so don't worry about that. You just click on it, fill out a couple of details, and then you get your certificate sent through. Just a quick word on FreeAgent. So we are award-winning accounting software for you that you and your clients will love. So we focus on the micro end of the market. So typically sort of 0 to 10 employee firms. That's where FreeAgent's real sweet spot is. We have got unrivaled support. We get great feedback on our support. People love it because there's a phone number that you can call, and the guys and girls in the team are fantastic. We've got a brilliant mobile app, which has a bunch of cool features, some of which we'll touch on a bit later, allowing you to capture data from transactions and do stuff on the go. So we are owned by NatWest, and I'm sure a few of you, at least on the call, will be familiar with the fact that you can have a free FreeAgent account with your NatWest Business Bank account. So that's NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Ulster Bank, and Metal Bank, for as long as they retain their accounts. We're HMRC recognised, HMRC compatible, so you can file your VAT, you can file your self-assessment, your company accounts and stuff through FreeAgent as well. And we won a bunch of awards, which we seem to do every year. So I will launch. It's my oversensitive mouse. Apologies. I will launch the first poll because we do have people who join us briefly at the beginning and then have to drop off for whatever reason. So if at some point you would like somebody to get in touch with you from FreeAgent, just please hit yes now. We'll just run this one for 30 seconds or a minute. And then you can find out more about becoming a partner with us, and you can get in touch with a dedicated account manager, and you can have somebody to support you on your FreeAgent journey as you start off down that road. Cool. Numbers are still moving, so we'll leave it open for a little bit longer. As I said, if you're not sure yet, that's fine. We've got more opportunities to say yes to this later on in the webinar. So another 15 seconds or so, folks. There we go. Numbers have stopped moving, so I'll end that now. Thank you. Appreciate you putting up with the admin there, guys, because I know it's we want to get into it, don't we? So quick intros now. So my name's Tony Stevenson. I am the Senior Digital Enablement Manager here at FreeAgent. So I get involved in a bunch of stuff, thought leadership pieces like this. You'll find me on LinkedIn most days. I'm involved with practice integrations, skilling out our sales team, talking on stages, presenting webinars, all that kind of stuff. My background, so I've spent the first half of my career in practice and industry, so I'm ACA and FCA now qualified, Deloitte, and a couple of an industry role and a smaller practice role. And then for the last nigh on 10 years now, I've spent a couple of years at Xero, a year traveling, a couple of years at smaller software houses, and I've been at FreeAgent now for over 5 years, my longest job, which is surprise as someone who's a serial job hopper. But yeah, just goes to show how much I love it. On our panel today, we have got Craig Clarke and Jordan Vickery. So I'm going to throw it over to Craig first for no other reason than he is top of the list here, to do a brief introduction for himself, and then we'll pass over to Jordan to do his introduction, and then back to me for a couple of minutes, and then we'll get into the panel.
Cool. Thank you, Tony, and hi everyone. I'm Craig. I'm the Director of Product here at FreeAgent. I've been with FreeAgent for over 7 years now, working in a number of roles here in product and design. And prior to FreeAgent, I worked in the geosciences area, delivering a new detection method across from startup to the industry. And prior to that, building on my role as a geophysicist at the start. So working with large methods and mathematical methods from day one, and excited to start talking about some of the role of AI and how that's helping bring FreeAgent into the conversation.
Amazing. Cheers, Craig. Jordan, over to you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to be here. I promised Tony I'd keep this short. So I'm Jordan. I'm the head of content at the Digital Accountancy Show. I'm also a global director at a SaaS consultancy and marketing agency called Journey. We work with a number of accounting tech providers, helping them with their marketing and how they work with people in the accounting channel.
Amazing. He's also part of the accounting house mafia as well.
I opted to keep that piece out for now.
You'll see him on decks at accountancy events up and down the country. Cool. So time for a quick poll before we kick things off. So this is just a poll about, right, let's just find the right one. Here we go. So 3 questions in this poll. So if you could answer all of them, that would be super useful. And they are about kind of AI and accounting. And it will, I launched it. That's strange. So about AI in accounting, there should be 3 questions on there. I've launched it, or at least it says I've launched it, but the numbers aren't moving, which is strange.
Can see it.
Yeah, well, that's good that you can see it. Yes, first brave person has answered them. Oh, I know what it was. People were considering the questions because there was 3 questions. That's why the numbers hadn't started going up. That's what it was, because it's not 1 question, yes or no. Yes, it's just an opportunity for you to kind of give us some insight into, what you think about AI and accounting, and what your kind of opinions are on it. Helps us to shape and frame how we approach this stuff in the future. It's also really interesting as well. The first question is, do you think you'll still broadly be doing the same day-to-day tasks at work in 5 years' time? Which of the following tasks would you be interested in using artificial intelligence to help with? There's a whole bunch of those. And then what AI topics, angles are you most interested in learning more about? AI in recruitment, security, AI data collection and verification seems to be standing out, that one. AI and onboarding, marketing content right in there as well. Excellent. Numbers are still moving, and I will give everyone another 30 seconds to get this one finished off. There we go. Oh, thanks. Another 10 seconds. Oh, right, I'm going to end that now. I'm going to share the results. So you'll be able to see that, do you think that you'll be broadly doing the same tasks in 5 years' time? Over half of you said no. Which of the following tasks would you be interested in using artificial intelligence to help with? Chasing clients for missing data. That was number 1. Auto reconciling of data in clients' accounts. That's interesting, isn't it, Craig? God, imagine if you could do that in a piece of bookkeeping software that already existed. And then what AI topics, angles are you most interested in learning about? Marketing and content right up there, data collection and verification right up there, AI and onboarding. Interesting. Customer service, yeah, brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, folks. That's really, really interesting. I'll stop the share, and then I will jump into my very brief bit, and then we'll get into the panel. So why is this important? Why are we talking about this today? So I think the fact that this was our most registered event this year probably goes to show why we're talking about this stuff. It's on everybody's lips at the moment. From March, when ChatGPT was launched and took the world by storm, became the fastest, most used piece of software in history. It's been part of everybody's kind of mind as to how do we address this stuff? How do we tackle it? How does it work for me? What should I be worried about? How do I use it? And I think that boils down into kind of three bits for me. So there's kind of the opportunity. How do I make this work for me? Then there's potentially, the sort of, I don't know, fear is the right word, but, potential kind of understanding of, what is this stuff? How does it work? How does it work for me? Do I need to use it? Do I just need to be aware of it? Is it something that, really does impact me on a day-to-day life? And, some of those questions we'll raise later. And then, just practically, how do I get started on this stuff? What is it that I can use it for? And, and how does this operate? So kind of, what do we mean when we say AI or artificial intelligence? So I picked this definition up from Google. So artificial intelligence is a field of science concerned with building computers and machines that can reason, learn, and act in such a way that would normally require human intelligence, or that involves data whose scale exceeds what humans can analyze. So I thought captured it quite nicely. So it's stuff to help us out and help us do things that we're not potentially capable of doing at the speed that computers are able to do it at. So we're going to approach this from 2 angles. So Craig's going to talk to us. We're going to run through a bunch of questions, and Craig's going to talk to us about kind of his views on it from a product perspective. And then Jordan's going to talk to us about his views on it from a marketing perspective, and we'll all kind of chime in as we go. So the first kind of session, first question that we've set for Craig is, how does AI present itself in our world today, Craig?
Yeah, well, as you said, Tony, I think from this year, AI is certainly having its moment in the collective consciousness of us all. We're hitting the news headlines, and there's this wave of new ideas and new content that's, we probably are crossing a threshold into new domains, certainly in some areas. But I think it's also important to recognize that this is a continued evolution of what humans have always been trying to do, which is to codify and improve the efficiency of our processes. And when it comes to AI is really the latest brand name of broader automation of process. And if we think back over the past 4 or 5 decades, you can, particularly in finance, you can see how algorithms and statistical methods have helped people to try and better understand the data points that are available to them, and to make those connections, to improve, to make better decisions off them. So we've seen things like, just neural networks and machine learning. These are terms that might not have breached the sort of social consciousness of us all, but that's the underlying methodologies that have been building up over decades and decades as we continue to try and connect things together. And in the early 2000s, it was this idea of big data. I remember all the chessboard machines that were breaking through, if you're of a certain generation. This is the next wave of that, and it's an exciting wave, and it's likely to be an accelerated impact, but it's also important to recognize we're already in that age. There are already tools that you're using today, your spell checker, your bank accounts. Those are things that are already using these methodologies. They're already embedded into certain workflows. And so whilst there is a new dawn coming, it's also a chance to us to recognize what do we utilize today, and what are going to be the places that we're going to improve upon. So I think an evolution rather than a complete revolution, particularly in some of the more regulated areas of where we work.
It's easy to see how you could easily feel like it's brand new this year, AI, right? And actually it's been around for a long time, and suddenly we've got a sort of poster child in ChatGPT and GPT-4 that's really brought it to the front. And at FreeAgent we were quite pleased because we've kind of been doing this stuff for quite a while, and it was nice that the spotlight suddenly kind of swung around on it, right?
Yeah, and I think, looking more broadly at the application of AI, you've got things like fraud detection, risk assessment, customer service, the chatbots, the feedback information to customers, or sentiment analysis, so you can understand trends. These are all things that are embedded into our workflows already, and that's what we're building on top of. So when you hear terms like ChatGPT or LLMs as large language models, these are all iterations on that idea of algorithmic interpretation. So they can do a lot of things. They can do some things that seem fantastical, but as with a lot of laboratory experiments or new to market, when you look into them, the fantasy can be a little bit unwarranted when you start to prod at the edges. And I think that's probably the stage we're at next, is people starting to really interrogate and question the validity of the responses that people are getting back.
I read, as I'm sure every homeowner on this call has done at some point in the last few months, is started to read about what happens when my mortgage goes up, and all the sort of stuff that's going around interest rates. And they were talking about mortgage providers using kind of early warning tactics to see when people might be in trouble. And one of the ones that they were using was a sort of interrogation model that looked at your supermarket spend. And if your supermarket spend went from Waitrose, this is genuinely true, goes from Waitrose to Aldi, they'll get that's a trigger sign for them to get in touch to say, do you need some help with your mortgage payment, which I thought was a fantastic real world application of this kind of stuff. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I think I think
that point there on that's a data point. But what's an important aspect to remember is that the human intelligence still needs to be in that in that calculation.
Yes.
It may be that the machines are able to do that interpretation more readily than a human can. They can, you're not wanting to download all your paper statements and look for Waitrose going into Sainsbury's. A computer can do that part, but there still needs to be that intelligence in defining the rules of how AI interacts with our relationships with each other. Yeah. And I think that, AI is just another tool in our arsenal for how we tackle problems together. And humans are involved in the design of this. Humans are involved in the shaping of it, and humans are involved in the application of it as well. It might seem like, AI is going to run away, but we are ultimately a society in control of that. And so we are still at the stage of being able to influence that, both from a regulatory perspective and from a application perspective.
Indeed. So next question, how does FreeAgent harness the power of AI?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's an evolution of where we've been around this idea of learned models. At FreeAgent, we're being part of the NatWest group. It's also important to recognize our efforts with our friends at the bank in terms of the scale of investigation going on. NatWest as a group has a lot of data scientists who are investigating this more broadly across all of finance. And it's fantastic to be part of that group of FreeAgent, of being able to lean on that size and the weight of effort and impact that we can have. But in terms of specifics at FreeAgent, we're developing that toolkit around some of those key areas. We talked about, you saw in that poll, around chasing information and the analysis of it. So we have our automated categorization from day one. So we have a machine learning algorithm that predicts to a high accuracy the category of a transaction, and that's now hitting over 50% of transactions are automatically explained. We have the extraction of receipt data via our methods there, so that can speed up that expense creation. And then on the other side of analysis of data, we have things like our benchmarking report, cash flow horizons, customer health scores, and radar insights. And they're all those points where our algorithms are looking for trends and analysis to trigger insights at the right point so that people can make informed decisions when it's relevant to them. And that's similar to that point around the Waitrose to Sainsbury's shift. It's those kind of interpretations, but FreeAgent have built into these layers already. And we're really looking for how do we expand those against actual problems that people are facing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I like about what FreeAgent does, is it does feel exactly like you just said, like it's not AI for the sake of AI, it's AI because it really does have an impact, and we've given deep consideration to how this affects our particular user base, not just how this might work generally if we were, throwing it at the wall. It's and we get a lot of good feedback on it, and it's equally important, I think, to point out is that, like Craig said, this is not new stuff. We've been doing this for some time now, and it's well embedded in everything we do. It's not a knee-jerk quick get something out because everyone's talking about it. This has been in place for years and years. So and we'll take a look at some of that stuff when we hit the demo at the end, folks. So if you want to have a look at how that works in real life, then stick around. I pulled this quote out from Craig because I think it's lovely, and I think it really summarizes kind of a lot of what we've talked about and a lot of what we where AI kind of really fits in. So the promise of AI is that it will lift the burden of the mundane, repetitive activity away from us to leave more capacity, context, and care to tackle the challenges only the human condition can master. I mean, it's beautiful on its own, Craig, but if you would like to expand on any of that or give us more thoughts, then you're welcome to. But as I said, I feel like this one might become a viral cult quote that hangs around for a little while yet.
It is leaning towards my naturally optimistic side on what the future can and will be, but I think it's attempting to recognize that there are advantages to AI, to automation, but there still is space and a demand and a need for the human to be involved in the relationship. It's not about taking away, it's about an additive benefit. And I think it's really recognizing that transition from humans doing the processing to humans being part of the empathy and the relationship building. And for some that will mean a change in our perspective as a society. But if you look very broadly, you have this idea that industrialization took away our muscle power. Automation is going to take away our need for repetitive processing, but there's still that human quality that can't be codified. And that's really where can we lift more of our energy into that space. And I know that is a transition away from where we are today, but we want to step into that with our eyes open and to look for where we can take the opportunities. So I think, again, so it's hopefully an optimistic way of looking at a change that we have in the future.
Love it. It's utopian. I love it. Perfect. So what are the opportunities you see to integrate AI into our workflows today? So this one I know is one that Jordan will be itching to jump on, and he'll get his chance. But yeah, your thoughts, Craig, on where does this fit in, right? Where does this practically apply?
So I think you touched on it, that we really need to focus on real opportunities to solve real problems. There's a huge risk that we do things because we can, because there's 3 data points there. Let's do analysis on them. And we forget why we even wanted to do that in the first place. So at FreeAgent, we lean on a methodology called jobs to be done, which is our way of really thinking about what is it that's the actual our customer's problem? What is the source of their need for a solution? And that takes away from how you would do something, but why. And that's where I think there's real opportunities for really digging back into what are the core problems. And some of those were listed out in the poll there. How do we get access to up-to-date and accurate data to make decisions? What are the challenges there? Bank statements, or receipts are still in a shoebox, or we don't understand they've got half of their accounts hidden somewhere else, and we don't have all of that information available. That's where there's some real opportunities. And I touched on some of the points there, but I think the points in the poll were really, really interesting common points. I think in the near future we'll see more of that chatbot related content, so things where tools are generating content based on a specific question. So things like the support chatbots that are already in FreeAgent and many other platforms, where the machine will attempt to analyze the question and give back information. And we've seen that expanding into practice tools. I think everyone's released something called Copilot recently. But this idea of, the machine being that middle layer between your client and you, and attempting to give you a leg up in generating content. So things like email responses, things like that, and to requests. I think that's a natural area. We want to touch on also, AI needs the data to work. It needs accurate data to feed into its machine. And open finance is another realm of regulatory space that is forcing platforms to make their data available, consistent, and connected. And that's another realm that's going to enhance and accelerate the AI adoption, because there's going to be more data made available. So bank feeds is an obvious one there. Now all bank feeds have to be a shared format, so everyone can access them. They're no longer locked behind a bank. That's going to come in for things like pensions, for loans, for mortgages, for your credit score. Once all of that's available consistently, that's going to feed into more and more workflows. I do think there's a lot of opportunity around this idea of health and well-being of information. So how can our AI tools or our automation tools spot trends, spot weaknesses in a portfolio, spot something outside of the norm, and then give that information to a human who can make an informed interpretation. But the automation is doing the job of flagging where the risks are. And this hopefully would allow people to work at a greater scale, because you're more confident of the machine being able to balance out where the anomalies are. But I think those are some key areas. So open finance is making more data available. Automation is going to make it easier to gather all of that data together. And then automation is going to be able to analyze a broader base of information that allows you to react more quickly to the targeted areas, rather than getting lost in the wealth of everything going on.
And I suppose as time goes on and software systems that hold data improve with their quality and integrity, that the tide rises slowly, right? And then the stuff you put over the top of it, the AI allows you to call on better quality data, which results in better quality outputs and stuff you can trust more, which is always a key point with this, right? You've got to be able to trust the stuff. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then you kind of no, I can't trust it, so I've got to delve into that stuff.
Yeah, I think that trust is part of the next point around sort of that really developing responsible AI of what does that mean? It comes back to that because we can. So I think a real challenge here for product teams such as mine and for anyone involved in AI is recognizing the damage that can come from wrong guidance or incomplete guidance. Now, AI usually is always going to return an answer, and it's going to do it with a lot of confidence, and it's going to look very complete and rich, and you're going to be like, wow, look at that. But it's only when you actually dig into it that you start to pick apart the points. And I think in terms of, if I take it from a team developing AI, there's some key points around that you need to think about. So accountability. So who is actually accountable for the information that these systems are generating? Yeah. At the moment, you have that human who's doing that analysis and interpretation. Where in the chain does that accountability land? Legality. How far should AI actually be allowed to reach? Now, I think accounting, finance is going to be at the more regulated end of the impact of AI. So I think there's going to be a slower impact of AI across the board because the regulations are going to be tighter. Although that's another point around legality, is that we're going to need governments to respond in a way that is ensuring and enshrining that trust in the system. We can't allow it to be broken. It's not the same as AI creating a digital painting. There are still legal and regulatory conditions to be met. Trust, control. I think a really key aspect is, how does someone know that an answer is correct? If you can't interrogate the calculation, how do you then go and have control and replicating that result? So I think these are key things. How big is that black box going to become of the system? And finally, on just a point, I think there's a real responsibility around considering exclusion. So, I mean, the ideal approach is, the utopian approach is that AI enables the customer or the human to become the center of a really informed decision-making tree. So they get all this information, they're then feeling control and empowered to make a great decision. The risk really is that AI selectively excludes everyone outside of a norm that it has defined. And a real challenge with AI at the moment is that nobody really is entirely sure how it works. There's a lot of just like how the inner workings of it goes. Not everyone knows how and why they're making the decisions it's making. So are we at a risk of feeling like we're generating these answers, but it's actually excluding a wider and wider range of people from being able to take control of their finances? So I think there's a lot of aspects there, probably quite high level aspects, but things that need to be considered, that AI is going to change people's perception of how to work.
It feels to me like if I was a government official looking to regulate this stuff, I would feel terrified at the pace of change and how we would go about getting in front of it, because it feels like it's just rolling uncontrollably into all these every single day. So there's an AI for that, whether it is an AI or not, or whether someone's just put AI on the front of it because they want funding or whatever it might be. There's another questions there, but getting into the realms of, well, how would we go about doing this and how would we go about regulating it? So we've all heard the story about ChatGPT or GPT-4 filling out a tax return, and that's great, and I'm sure that's helpful to people who have got no clue, but ultimately if it goes wrong, it's not got professional indemnity insurance. So again, it comes back to the accountability of, well, okay, well, I filed it because you said it was right, but now I don't even know who to go to argue about whether it was right or not, and whether it was right or not. I just trusted it.
Yeah, and there's some examples of that, such as the EU are talking about excluding AI from certain domains and making it illegal to use it in certain areas. The AI, the ChatGPT, the generative AI is really that, the classic tech scene of moving fast and breaking stuff along the way and as it explodes.
Yeah.
But we will need our regulatory bodies to react to this and put in breakers on the use cases of this, or the applications and the reach of this for the good of everyone.
Definitely.
But it will need to react quickly. We can't be doing.
This isn't a 10-year project.
Not smoking bans 50 years afterwards.
I'm just conscious of time, and I would like to get to Jordan. So what I might do is just pause this. What does the future of AI in finance look like? Question, and we might come back to it a bit later if that's okay, because I want to just make sure that we give Jordan plenty of time and we don't run too far over for our guests. So if you're all right with that, Craig, we will skip on to Jordan, and then we'll come back to us. I will launch this poll now. So if you joined us late, you'd like a bit of help with digitizing your client base, then I'll run that poll now while we do that, and then we will hop over to Jordan. We'll start Jordan's questions, and then we will be rocking and rolling. So Jordan, you come at this from a very practical marketing-based background, and I know that it's something that we're all here to kind of find out. Well, actually, if I'm thinking about going and stepping into these waters, what are the things that I should be thinking about? We're going to kick off with this one. So, what AI tools are available to help accountants with their marketing?
Short answer is lots. There is probably maybe 20 to 30 new AI marketing tools coming onto the market every single week. Most of them are built on generative AI, which is, ChatGPT. Give it a prompt and it spits out some content in return. I think the question that people want to be thinking about, and I saw a question in the Q&A just now, which was, should I subscribe to ChatGPT for my small accounting firm? And the answer really is, well, what are you looking to achieve? Like, there's a ton of shiny new tools on the market, AI or not. And the question around whether or not you use them really comes back to, well, what's the strategy and what are the goals that you have in place as a firm? So if we look at this from a marketing perspective, and you are actively looking to market and promote your firm, then AI tools are incredibly helpful because they can really help to accelerate and streamline that creative workflow. And the beauty of using AI tools like ChatGPT and a couple of others that I can mention in a second is that it allows you to do more in less time. It's not a case of, let's just replace this process with an AI tool. It's a case of, previously I could write 2 blog posts a month. Now I can write 10 blog posts a month, which means I'm putting more content out there to the world. It increases my chances of attracting ideal prospects, therefore increases the ability to attract ideal clients to my firm. So there's a ton of tools out there. The ones that I would typically recommend at least starting with would just be ChatGPT. I think it's a fantastic place to start because most of the other tools are built on a similar model to ChatGPT, where you give it a prompt and then it spits out an answer in return. So I think just get curious for now. Go sign up to ChatGPT if you haven't already. Have a play around with it. Start with some really basic prompts around creating social media content or creating blog posts, but just beware of the pitfalls of that. Like like Craig was discussing earlier, you've got to question the validity of the output from these tools. And ChatGPT can hallucinate a lot. I've given it prompts before and it's given me answers, and it's just so far removed from the truth. And it's been fed on all of this data from the internet for many, many years. And not all of the information that's available online is true or accurate. So therefore, the answers that ChatGPT gives you isn't necessarily going to be true or accurate either. So just keep that in mind as you start to use these tools. But I think the next question, Tony, was around some more specific use cases, which might be a more helpful discussion point to move on to. Instead of just talking about the tools themselves, let's think about what are the actual use cases for them. So for me, a big use case is actually like content creation, but it's not replacing humans in the content creation process. It's actually just accelerating what that creation process looks like. So a really basic approach to take here would just be go to ChatGPT and say, write me a social media post about the benefits of cloud accounting. And it might give you a post. It might be okay. Some bits might need tweaking. But I think a better use case to think about is, how do you train something like ChatGPT to write in your tone of voice, to write in your style, to write with your ideal clients in mind, and the kind of brand of your firm in mind. And all of that's possible. You just have to give it the data to begin with. So really what you need to understand as you start to use these tools is, how do you actually prompt them effectively? Because simply going and saying, write a post about X, isn't going to give you the best possible outcome. Whereas if you go in there, and we've been doing this with a couple of our clients, where we'll spend days training it on the firm, we'll feed it details about who their ideal clients are, the pains that they face in their businesses, the challenges they're facing, the goals of the businesses, what they're looking to achieve. We'll then feed it things like tone of voice guidelines, brand guidelines. We'll feed it past blog posts that have been written or past social media posts that have been written. And you can then prompt ChatGPT to analyze all of this content. And what it will then create for you is essentially its own version of you that can then create more content. So then when you go to it and say, hey, can we, using everything you know about our ideal clients, our tone of voice, our firm and everything else, please write a blog post about X. And suddenly the output is literally 20X of what it would have been originally, because you've given time and spent time training it to begin with. So that's one use case. Another really relevant use case in marketing is just repurposing video. There's tools like Opus Clip, and another one, can't quite remember the name now, Hinch, I think maybe, Munch, yeah. Munch and Opus Clip. Now these are AI powered video editing tools where you could upload, for example, this webinar recording, right? Like once we finish this webinar, we could take this recording, we could upload it to that platform. The AI will then analyze the content of that video, the audio, what was discussed, and then based on those points, it will then slice and dice that into video snippets that you can share on social media. So instead of somebody having to manually go and sit through the recording and pick out the best points, AI will do its best. And the important part there is do its best. It's not going to be accurate. To go through and analyze what was said, the sentiment, what was the point, and then try to create some video snippets that you can use. And that's going to save a ton of time in that process. And like I said, it's not 100% accurate. You're still going to need to go in and maybe tweak certain bits and say, actually, no, this wasn't quite the right point, and there's a different section that I want to use. But it can accelerate the creative process in a huge way.
I think that an important distinction that I remember where I picked it up from, but is the idea of it being a tool that helps you to sort of replicate what you might be able to achieve if you had 10 interns sitting there for you and you were like, right, okay, so your insight level is maybe kind of not so high, but your time is relatively cheap, so we can kind of give you this stuff and you can learn as you go. But we're not going to assume that you're going to be the person who would be signing off on this stuff and having the creative input from the very beginning. The sort of idea of ChatGPT or any of these particular tools in isolation or in conglomeration, they're not driving the bus. They're tools for you to use. They're not tools to replace you. Certainly not in the instance. Maybe they might do a little bit of that over time, but you're going to really have to work with it to enable it to be able to do that. So I think that is an important distinction to make, is that exactly like you said, it's not something that you're using to replace senior members of staff. It's something that you're using to augment the capacity that you've got and work closely with it to do that. Any resources that you would recommend to people for, because prompting is everything, right? So if you aren't good at prompting, you're not going to be good at using these tools. Are there resources that people can go and access? I think came across one because it Learn Prompt or Learn Prompting, a website where you can go and there's a free open source training and it teaches you how to prompt.
So I'm dropping a link in the chat now. This is for a website I'm not affiliated, by the way. It's called PromptPal. It's basically a prompt directory where people are engineering prompts for various different things, from creating blog posts to creating surveys. And you can go in there and access those prompts and then feed them into things like ChatGPT and amend them and tweak them. So yeah, those things exist. I've also got a newsletter I wrote, if I'm allowed to drop a link to that in the chat as well.
Drop away, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah. It includes some prompts that you can also feed into ChatGPT to help you when it comes to creating and editing content. I think editing content is also another really good use case here, because one of the great things about generative AI is its ability to analyze data. So if you can go and give it a blog post, for example, and then ask it to review that in line with some kind of editorial checklist, it can go through and do that and perform a really in-depth analysis in a lot more detail and probably infinitely quicker than any human being could ever do. So it's also thinking about how do you use these tools, not just to create, but also to improve and enhance things that already exist. And I guess that kind of comes back to the whole data conversation we were having earlier with Craig. The fact that, you know, this kind of AI can now analyze data at scale very, very quickly and to spit out insights that people wouldn't be able to spot in any close amount of time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask everybody who's listening, just drop in the chat like your favorite couple of AI tools that you might have got stuck into already. I think that'd be really useful just to see what themes emerge and see if someone's brave enough to be the 86th person to make a comment on this chat and see where we get to. So yeah, just drop in your favorite 1 or 2 AI tools that you're using. Be really useful just to understand what everybody is kind of getting stuck into out there. Jordan and I had a shop floor conversation at Accountex earlier in the year, and he said something to me which really stuck with me, and I've repeated it on a number of webinars and a number of other bits and pieces since, and it's the idea of, so Craig touched on it earlier as well, it's that question of jobs to be done, and is this a job that actually needs to be done? So the conversation that Jordan and I had went something along the lines of Jordan's talking to a prospect about that they need marketing. They've come to him and asked him for some support from marketing, and his first question is, what capacity for clients have you got to onboard at the moment? And they say 2 or 3, and then he asks how many they're getting through their original referral network already, and they usually say something like 1 or 2 or 2 or 3. And Jordan's response to that is that you do need to consider whether you do need marketing and whether you're geared up for 10 or 20 new clients a month, because actually there is that temptation to sort of see this stuff and think, I need to be doing it, and actually, you know, should we be working on operational efficiency to improve our, you know, clients to bookkeeper ratio in our firm, so that we are able to utilize some of the other stuff that's not content generation, but later on then that fills the gap that we've created by improving our systems and things. So do take that opportunity to step back and think about, you know, do we actually need to spend time doing this, or are we just doing it because it's a nice new shiny thing, right?
Yeah. What's the strategy at the end of the day, right? Like if we look at it from a marketing perspective, people go and spend time posting things on LinkedIn or creating nice videos for Instagram. And my question is, well, why are you doing that? Like, what's the strategy behind why you're doing it? Are you doing it because someone told you to do it and because other people are doing it? Or is there actually a strategy in place underpinning your process and approach to using that? So, you know, are you actively going to LinkedIn because you know dead cert that your ideal clients hang out there and the content you're creating will resonate with them specifically? Or are you doing it because somebody told you need to be active on LinkedIn? And the same goes with these AI tools. Are you using ChatGPT because it's part of your workflow and it's enhancing that workflow? Or are you using it as some shiny new tool just because everybody's talking about it and you feel inclined to have to use it? There's no requirement to have to use this stuff. You know, a lot of the developments in AI will be built into the products that you already use. You won't have to worry about how you integrate this into your workflow. It will just be part of your workflow. It will be part of the products that you use. It will just be a feature. You know, you don't have to worry about training on understanding AI and how large language models work. I mean, having some awareness would be great, perhaps, and understanding, you know, the impact of it. But at the end of the day, it's just technology that's underpinning things that already exist.
You want to go through Jordan's back catalogue? You put a post up some time ago about kind of, it's like 8 points to maximize what you've already got in terms of generating new referrals and new business into your firm. And I'm not sure there was any AI stuff on there, but there might have been some, a little bit maybe, but there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do before you even start this road. So do ask that question. It is an important one.
Yeah.
The challenges and risks that accountants and bookkeepers should be aware of when using these tools. I know you're passionate about this, mate. So
yeah, I mean, Craig obviously touched on it really well earlier from a the perspective of like using AI for good and responsible AI and all the kind of safeguards and regulation that will need to come in place. I look at it from the angle of let's think about content creation, for example. Like, there is so much crap content out there in the world already. Like, you log on to any social media platform and within 2 minutes you're literally inundated with crap posts, crap blogs, rubbish content that literally adds no value to your life.
Yeah.
And the risk here of just using things like ChatGPT to just, churn out generic social media posts or generic blogs is that all you're doing is contributing to the noise. It might be easy to do it. It might feel slightly fun and trivial to go in there and, create a blog post in less than 30 seconds, but ultimately what's it achieving? It's just adding more rubbish to an already large rubbish pile. So I think that's one risk and one challenge to be aware of. The other thing is, very similar to bookkeeping, it's garbage in, garbage out. What is going into this in the first place that influences the output? ChatGPT has been trained on a huge amount of data on the internet, and I think it's still capped up to, is it 2021 where it's capped up to in terms of its knowledge, or has that changed now?
So I think that was ChatGPT the 3, and then I think 4 works on the internet now, doesn't it? I don't know. Craig might know.
Don't know the details to dig into, but yeah, ChatGPT 4, it's gone up by billions of data points from 3.
But the point is that, like, you have no control over the accuracy of the data that it's working from. So if you go to ChatGPT and say, write me a blog about the latest tax legislation in the UK, you have no idea what it's accessing in order to actually create that, right? Like, you can actually go and give it resources. So for example, if there's an article on the HMRC website that's been published last week, you can go and get that link and give it to ChatGPT and say, analyze this and create a blog post from it. That's going to be much more accurate than simply going to something like ChatGPT and say, oh, go and tell me what all the latest tax changes are for the current tax year, because you have no idea what it's going to do and what it's going to access as part of that. So I think just going into tools like ChatGPT as well as other AI tools with this awareness that it's not a holy grail solution and you have to question the validity and accuracy of what it's giving you is just really important.
Healthy skepticism, right?
Yeah.
If you went to ChatGPT and said, give me a blog post about Digital Accountancy Show, and it'd tell you that it was at White Hart, not White Hart Lane, Spurs Ground, right? Yeah, exactly right. If it was working on 2021 data, super important. And I think as an industry, as a profession, we are pretty good at maintaining, and by profession I mean accountancy profession and bookkeeping profession, we are quite good at maintaining a healthy level of cynicism and and questioning about these things. We're not the most fanatical of bunch, so stick with that and make sure that you're asking the questions of, because it doesn't know the stories in your head, right? It knows how to take what's out there and craft something sensible, which is a good jumping off point, but ultimately it's not necessarily the holy grail. How should they not be used? Kind of ties into the previous question.
Yeah, I think just recapping on what I said, don't just use it to replace the creative process, but instead think about how it can enhance an existing workflow that you have. So it's not a case of ChatGPT is now my blog writer. It's a case of ChatGPT facilitates and accelerates the process of creating blog content, but there's still an element of human input, human review at either end of that process.
So I'm going to ask Craig the question I jumped over, and then also yourself the question that I jumped over from Craig as well. And we'll start with Craig, and then we'll come back to you, Jordan, and then we'll quick Q&A wrap up, and then we'll be finished, give or take, on time. So the question was, how do you see the future of AI? mapping out how would you like to see the future of AI, you can answer either of those questions, mate.
I'd like to see it tackling real problems. I think at the minute we're playing with a new toy. I think I'd really like to see it applied to genuine problems that people face, in a way that recognizes its place in the wider system of that relationship between two humans or multiple humans. I think it will accelerate incredibly quickly. In talking to some of our colleagues in more of that laboratory conditions of imagining AI, there's some incredible spaces that the team at NatWest and FreeAgent are moving into. I think that application in the real world will be slower in these more regulated domains, but I think we shouldn't forget the societal change. AI is not going to just apply to one specialized area of domain. It's going to be across our entire life. And quite soon, it's not going to be a shiny new toy. It's going to be something boring, as you said, Jordan. It's going to be like baked into everything that we have. And it's going to be an expectation of the next generation, both that information is available, the speed of it, the speed of access to information, as well as accepting the answer that is given. It may not, that we have to challenge it to ensure that it's accurate, but I think more and more people accept the answer they're given because it has this very, like, not an illusion, but has this appearance of validity immediately because it doesn't feel broken. So finally, wrapping up, I think my key point for people working in this domain is that content generation, whilst you can accelerate that's only one aspect of our roles. I think the real key point is content, the comprehension of that content, and that's where that humanity is still there. We need to be able to share that information with others. We need to be able to understand it, interpret it, and analyze it, and we need to be able to persuade and guide others by understanding the content that's been generated for us. And that's still where the human skill is going to be, and that's human knowledge. So I think it's going to accelerate quickly, but if we go in with our eyes open, I think there's lots of interesting areas where you can elevate the work we do away from the repetitive pieces of work.
I quite agree. Jordan, same question as you, mate. Where would you like to see AI go? Where do you think it will go?
I mean, I would like to see just continued adoption of it within technology, like Craig mentioned, to solve real world problems. I think at the moment we're seeing a few companies essentially stick AI onto the side of something just because it's a shiny new thing and that they think it's going to help
funding.
Yeah. Where do I think it's going to go, in all honesty? We had a session at the Digital Accounting Show earlier this year. When was it? June. And on the main stage, and it was about how will AI impact practice management in accounting. And quite honestly, I think in the next 12 months, just a lot of the hype's going to die down. I think at the moment, there's a lot of hype and buzzwords being banded around, and it feels new and exciting, although the technology isn't that new at all. I just think it's going to become part of everyday processes and technology. And to be honest, I think a lot of the time you won't even realize that it's AI that you're using. You'll just be using a piece of software and doing something, and there will be AI in the background helping to facilitate what it is that you're doing. I don't think people need to be fanatical that, oh my God, it's AI that's doing this, in the same way that you're not kind of going, oh my God, there's some automation running in the back of Xero that's doing this incredible thing for me, or FreeAgent, sorry. So yeah, I think it will die down. I think it's still good to be curious. I don't think you need to spend heaps of time reading into how AI works and how large language models work and all that stuff. Like, leave that to the people that work in tech and the developers. It's their responsibility to understand that and to understand how to responsibly build it into the products that you use. I think from a user perspective, it's just exciting, right? Things are going to improve, like in the same way that automation came in and helped to improve workflows. AI is now going to come in and help to transform it and give it that next evolution.
I like to think, so I'm going to answer my own question. It was actually Craig's question, but I'm going to answer as well. So if you were to ask my wife, she would be delighted if AI could solve the problem of things just working how they're supposed to work. It's one of my most overused phrases, which is in deep frustration. Why doesn't this thing just work? And that, I feel, is kind of where I would love to see it go, is to sort of, like you said, the hype to kind of die down, and actually we know that there is some cool stuff this really does. There's some stuff where we can actively use it, but the majority of it is just kind of plugged into the background. Like, you remember when you first had a mobile phone that had the internet attached to it, and you were kind of like, you started using it and you went, oh, there's no way I'll be able to do any of these things on this phone using the internet, because I know it will take me 20 minutes to load up a page. And you didn't really have the concept of apps in the same way that we did now. Whereas now you think like, oh, you think nothing of downloading a series on Netflix and sitting on a plane watching it on your phone. Whereas previously you would have gone, well, I can't download that because I don't have enough data, and it won't work on my phone anyway because my phone won't be able to store it. It'll be too big. But now that just works, and it works how you kind of think it always should have worked, but obviously the technology had to catch up. And that's where I'd love to see our AI go, is for it to just kind of melt away into the background to something that we can trust and that has really, really useful everyday applications. But there are still these kind of beacons of I can actually go and jump into this and make it a point of difference, rather than it just becoming so accessible but at a really reductive level, like basic prompting with ChatGPT, and that cesspit of banal content that's got no personality and no real furtherment to the professional, whatever it is that you're particularly concerned with it. So that's how I would kind of like to see it bed down, and there'll be something else next year, right? 5 years ago we were all talking about big data, and that faded away, and
it feels like the metaverse, right? Can you remember when the metaverse
I remember that.
And everybody was like, oh my god, the metaverse is the future. You had investment firms pumping millions, probably billions of dollars into metaverse technology. It's like, well, where is that? I'm sure there are products with that kind of tech built in. I'm sure it's being used, but it's not still being shouted about from the rooftops. I think AI is slightly different, right? But I think it will die down in a similar way.
I think it's important to recognize that as you called out, Tony, it's more that the hype might die down, but the actual application becomes embedded. So yes. Big data, open finance is an example of that. Access to bank transactions for everyone, that is big data. And the system, it's not, the interpretation is more big data, but they are being built. NatWest with our bank of APIs is an example of these systems opening up. That's an evolution of this concept of big data. And I think AI, the hype, the people typing in, write me a birthday card for my daughter kind of things, and that probably fades away, but it becomes just part of your world. What's important is that we make it a relevant part of our world, and that's where listening to the people that we build services for, so the people on the call and elsewhere, what are the real problems that you're facing? And Jordan, you touched on it. What's your strategy? Why are you even posting social content? From a product point of view, what is the actual thing you're struggling with? Focus on those parts, then the tools you use come naturally from that, and you'll get to the solution you the impact you want, but only if you recognize why you're doing it in the first place. And I think that's where we should put our energies, not on how do these tools operate.
There's also an element of just because you can, it doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
And like I was reading something the other day that was so interesting. It was talking about how AI, and especially generative AI, is now going to take over the world of customer support, and you can have all these AI chatbots. And it's just like, from a customer's perspective, how frustrating is it when you go to a support page or a support chat and you're interacting with a bot and you're just not getting anywhere, and you're not getting the answers that you want, and you're going around in circles? How does that make you feel compared to when you actually manage to speak to a real human being? And it's just like, I can kind of understand why you might want to integrate that into something like customer support, but it doesn't mean you should. right? Like depending on your brand and what it is that you're offering support, like I'm sure that actually offering some level of human support is a much better strategy that you should consider.
Yeah, there's a lot of, when we're building our software, it's like, remember when that used to just be a button I pressed? Now I have to have a 6-minute long conversation with a chat bot just to try and get to the thing I used to press a button for. And I think there's a real risk of that in terms of early implementations of these. Oh, look, just because we can create all this content, it used to be simpler to actually solve the problem rather than creating all this cloud of information around it.
Yeah.
We'll be on time.
We are beyond time, but I found this whole webinar particularly fascinating from a research, from a panel recruitment perspective, and from a personal learning perspective. It's really nice to talk about something that's kind of outside of my immediate comfort zone, which doesn't always happen on these webinars, because often we have a similar topic from different slants, but this is new stuff for us in terms of pushing this into our audience. So I'm really glad that it was well received. We are over time, so I have whipped through the Q&A, and there's nothing really in there that's it's more free agent questions, and they've been answered and kind of dealt with as we've gone through. So what I think we're probably going to do now is we're going to call time on the main part of the webinar. So what I would like to do is just extend a big thank you to both of our panelists. So Craig and Jordan, I think you've both been incredibly insightful, really well considered. And I'm sure that every single person on the webinar has taken tons of stuff away to go and ruminate on and practically apply in their day-to-day world. And even if that application is, do you know what, I actually don't need to do this stuff because, you know, I'm not doing it for the right reasons. But there'll be a bunch of people who will be able to kind of go away and get stuck into this stuff even better. So thank you. I'd like to extend a wider thank you to the sort of wider free agent team. So Dave, Ed from the data analytics team have had a whole bunch of input into this stuff. It's a topic that we've discussed a lot within free agent and put out more things in this vein to other audiences. As usual, Stuart for being on the flight deck, Georgia and the team for all of their support and putting all these webinars on. There's a huge amount of work that goes into putting these webinars on, and yeah, they're not easy, and they run smoothly because of them. I just turn up as a gun for hire for an hour and ask a few questions. So and a big thank you again to everyone that has listened, dialed in. I think we were up to sort of 350 participants ish as we moved through. Really enjoyed it again. Absolutely brilliant. I'd love to do another one of these, and hopefully we will. Craig and I will both be talking at the I was going to say Digital Accountancy Show then, but that probably will be the case, but next year at Accountex North in September on a similar topic. So if you want to come along and hear further thoughts on that, then you're more than welcome to. So as I mentioned before, we will have a brief demo now of free agent. So Craig and Jordan, you're more than welcome to drop off. There's no input required from you guys, and anyone else that would like to sort of stick around and just see 5 or 10 minutes of free agent, then you're more than welcome to. And I look forward to seeing you on the other side. So thanks again, guys, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.
You just bear with me, folks, while I just get everything sorted. And while we do that, I'll just launch another poll. So as if you'd like to find out more, then you're more than welcome to. And yeah, if you've said yes, say yes again. If you've not, then you can drop a yes in now. If you just bear with me, I'll get my free agent sorted and open. There we go. So just move that away. So free agent. What I'll do is I'll just jump in, show you this sort of the dashboard. So this is kind of where we look after our clients. So when you log into FreeAgent, if you partner with us, you can have a free dashboard, and then you'll have an account manager who will help you to get the most out of FreeAgent. When you do that, you get that set up and it'll have your nice list of clients on here. What we quite often find is that practices have already got some FreeAgent clients, but they don't have a dashboard. So you can just kind of get it all tidied up into one place. No obligation to add anything more than that if you've got the clients you want on FreeAgent, but it's always useful to have the dashboard because it just gives you a bunch of options to make life easier for you. So you'll have various different bits and pieces up here. Practice portal is really useful, so you can dive into accreditation and partner resources and things like that. But what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into FreeAgent, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff we talked about just very quickly, 5-10 minutes. So you'll drop in here. This is the overview. So this gives you a nice understanding of kind of what's going on in FreeAgent. So you'll notice we've got banking here, P&L as what's happening, tax timelines. So this is a feature that people really seem to enjoy in FreeAgent. It is essentially just tells you where your tax return deadlines are coming up. VAT, self-assessment, counting, period ends, corporation tax, CT600s, CT 100, SA 100s, and that kind of stuff as well. So sort of filters through there depending on what type of entity that you've got. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into banking. So banking is the heartbeat of FreeAgent, and you'll notice here we've got a bunch of different bank accounts, and we're going to jump into this one, and we're going to have a quick look at how AI works within FreeAgent. So you'll notice we've got all transactions. So if we go for all time periods, all transactions, then you'll notice here that we've got some green ones, and then we've got some red ones, and then we might have some purple ones in there if people have added manual transactions. But the ones that we're really interested in for now are these orange ones for approval, and we'll just come back to that in a second. So how this color system works is, so this green transaction here, highlighters, that has been explained to FreeAgent. So FreeAgent knows what that is. That's got a green writing, which means that we've assigned it as a payment. We've put it as a VAT rate, and then we have added it to stationery, and now FreeAgent's allocated that where it needs to go in the P&L. If it's red, that means FreeAgent doesn't know what it is yet, and we've got opportunity to tell it where it is. When we've got these transactions that sit here for approval, so this is where the artificial intelligence stuff starts to come into FreeAgent. So it's kind of two main places that it hits FreeAgent. One of them is the bank, and the other one is in our mobile app when we are taking photos of and assigning transactional information. So there's two parts to the artificial intelligence built in here. So the first piece, what it does is it says, right, okay, so let's say I had LinkedIn Premium, and then I said, right, okay, I'm going to go, right, LinkedIn Premium. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that to advertising and promotions. Next time it comes in, put it to advertising and promotions. Next time it comes in, put it to advertising and promotions. Eventually, FreeAgent goes, all right, that's what you do with LinkedIn Premium account, so I'm going to start doing that for you. All right, and then what it will do is start doing it for you. And then if you start trying to change your mind, you can change your mind, just keep moving it to the new place and it work that out. And then the second way that it works, so it's based on your previous behavior. The second way that it works is slightly different. So what it does is it goes, right, okay, what we did was we got all the data that's ever happened in FreeAgent, and we started to look at how that data trended and what people did with those transactions. So we started with a really narrow set of transactions and a really high bar in terms of how often it needed to happen. And a good example of this is Network Rail. So what we did with Network Rail was we said, right, okay, so greater than 95% of the time, Network Rail gets put to travel. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do that for you, whether you've done it or not in the first place, because we think that 19 out of 20 is a high enough cadence for us to feel like we're being helpful. We started with about 10 or 15 transactions, and as time's gone by, those transactions have widened and the 95% bar has come down slightly. And as every time we move it down slightly, we always test to make sure that the accuracy hasn't diminished, in a proportion that's not acceptable. Trouble with these things is once someone switches it off, they very rarely switch it back on again. So what that meant was that it started off in the region of somewhere around 11-12% of transactions that were being covered by this, And as Craig mentioned earlier in the webinar, we're now up to somewhere in the region of 100 somewhere in the region of 50% of transactions are dealt with by our by our model. We call it guess, and that basically means that your transactions are being allocated without you having to do that for you, which is super helpful, saves a whole ton of time, and the accuracy rate is somewhere upwards of 90% of those transactions get left where they're put by FreeAgent. So that's one of the applications of artificial intelligence within FreeAgent. Another one of the ones that Craig mentioned was cashflow. So we have like a kind of cashflow modeling tool, which essentially, so it's not a full-blown cash flow forecast, but what it does is it takes a whole bunch of data points and it basically kind of aggregates them into a forecast of what we think the cash balance is going to be over the course of the next 3 months, which is another way that that helps to give you an opportunity to model out the future behavior of your clients. NatWest's really keen on this one as well, so this one will continue to evolve and become more robust. What I'm also going to do is, I thought that might be the case. So just bear with me a second. I'll just jump into a different client. So what we're also going to do is go through to files here. So on our mobile app, we have a function which is called auto extract, and auto extract, we're in the process of changing the name of it, and I'm not sure if that's happened yet or not. So if it's moved over to smart capture, then my apologies, but auto extract or smart capture. What happens with that is you take a photo of a receipt and then it extracts the data from that receipt, and then it also then can automatically attach that receipt to the right transaction within FreeAgent as it sees them, and it can also automatically allocate the right nominal code as well. So you'll notice as we come through here, there'll be one with a little, there you go, one with a little lightning bolt on it, which means that it's been extracted, and I can create a new expense from it, and then I can attach it to a transaction, or it'll automatically attach itself to a transaction, and having pulled that out, it all worked out from the receipt where it's likely to sit. So cool. So that's just a little bit of a look and feel of FreeAgent. Super easy to use. And what I'll do for the 135 of you that are still on here, I'm just going to run one final poll for anyone that does want to have somebody get in touch. It's not worked. That's really strange. I don't know what I need to do. Maybe I've not ended that one. Yeah, that'll be why. There we go. So final poll, final few minutes. So final opportunity to just say, yeah, John, actually, I would like somebody to get in touch, if you would. And while we do that, I will just say another big thank you to everyone who stuck around for an hour and 18 minutes and listened to the full webinar. You are the survivor class of the August webinar for FreeAgent. So pleasure talking to you all. I hope you all got something from it. I'll leave that up for a few more seconds and just make sure we've captured everybody. But yeah, nothing more from me. You are more than welcome to drop off. And thanks again.